Hello, my name's Florence. Welcome to the theobspod. I'm an NHS obstetrician, hoping to share some thoughts and experiences about my working life. Perhaps you enjoy Call the Midwife, maybe birth fascinates you, or you're simply curious about what exactly an obstetrician is. You might be pregnant and preparing for birth. Perhaps you work in maternity and want to know what makes your obstetric colleagues tick, or you want some fresh ideas and inspiration. Whichever of these is the case, and for that matter, anyone else that's interested, the theobspod is for you. Episode 136. It's okay to ask. I'm welcoming today to the podcast Teri Gavin-Jones, and Teri got in touch about a series of brilliant films and really interesting work that she has been doing. So, Teri, perhaps you can just tell people a little bit about yourself and your role to start off with.
Thanks, Florence. Yeah. So, hi, everybody. My name's Teri Gavin-Jones. I am a midwife, first and foremost, but my title is Senior Clinical Lead for maternity, and I work across an LMNS. And if you don't know what an LMNS is, because we like a lot of acronyms in the NHS, it's a local maternity and neonatal system. So I cover 3 different maternity units, and that's 2 in Suffolk, so Ipswich and West Suffolk, and 1 in Colchester.
Fantastic. And you got in touch with me because you had made these films, and the films immediately grabbed me because the title was It's Okay to Ask. And I like the comedy show The Last Leg. I don't know if you've watched that.
I know it, yes.
And they have a hashtag, Is It Okay? And I really like that because you're allowed to ask all the stupid questions that might be offensive or difficult to ask. So when you sent me these films saying it's okay to ask, my interest was immediately piqued. Good. And I thought this could be good. And definitely, I've really enjoyed watching them. But what I wanted to understand before we move on to the films is a little bit of background. So they're cultural curiosity films, yes, aimed at educating or getting us to question and think about the different cultures that we see within maternity care. So would you like to tell us a bit about how this came about?
I'd love to. So I really, want to highlight the terminology and the language. So we've used cultural curiosity quite deliberately. I think there's a lot of different phrases bandied around, and a lot of it tends to be about cultural awareness training or cultural competency, which really scares me, if I'm honest, because I just don't feel qualified to be culturally competent. And that's not to say that I'm always striving to be it, without a doubt. But it terrifies me that I could do some e-learning and tick a box and be culturally competent.
Yes.
Because for me, it's a journey, isn't it? It's just evolving the whole time.
Yes.
So I think the cultural curiosity is about us opening a conversation with somebody else to say, actually, I know a bit, but I really don't know very much. And I'm really relying on you to share and tell me your story. So that's the first thing to say about this. And for the background, we had to submit a 5-year equity plan to NHS England last year. Every LMNS in the country did so. And you and probably lots of your listeners will be really aware of all of the data that's coming out of Embrace around the health inequalities.
Yeah.
The disparities are quite stark and really startling. And I know for us as maternity services, we are genuinely worried about it. But genuinely saying this is complicated. There's not one thing that we could do to fix it. It's multifaceted. There are many, many things. So we had to start. And where I started was with an equity forum. So I gathered together the leaders of our local voluntary and community sector. And I said, would you come and meet with me monthly and just let the whole process be driven by you. Tell us what we're doing. Just tell us. And what we're doing wrong, actually, and where we're going wrong. That was the start of it, really. And we've got a really diverse equity forum, and we do all get together once a month, and we meet. And I say to them, I'll throw a topic out, and they'll come back and talk about their community's experience within that. So that was important, I think, to hear and to learn about their voices. And through that journey, as a maternity service, we decided to invest some money in the voluntary and community sector. And I found 6 organisations that we wanted to partner with. And we put it out to tender, and we said, if we gave you some money and if we partnered with you, what could you do in terms of, I suppose, lifting the profile of maternity and us engaging with that community? We talk about those kind of hard to reach or seldom heard communities, which again are just statements that really upset me. They're seldom listened to, is what I've discovered on this journey. So it was those communities that I went to, and naively on the start of this, honestly, Florence, I was so naive around what I knew and still what I know. And I went to one organisation which is called African Families in the UK, and they're an amazing organisation out in Colchester. And I met with their leader. She's a wonderful woman called Rachel Walton. And I sat down and I said, look, we know that maternity services are not doing a good job for your community. How can we make this better? Can I come and can I survey your women? Can I ask them what we could do better? Can I sit with them and ask them questions and take the survey results and get some work done around this? And she looked at me and she looked me in the eye and she said, no, you cannot do that. She said, you have surveyed our women nationally. You understand that Black women are dying. You know that. Stop asking questions. Why don't you just start doing something about it?
Lovely. Love it.
I immediately loved her. I'm going to be really honest. I could get it, although it set me with fear, because coming from a background where we ask questions and survey people, I said to her, what shall I do? She said, come and spend time with the community, walk with them, eat with them, share their stories.
Yes.
They want to feel heard.
Yeah.
That's how I started. So I sent an email to my boss saying, if you need me, I'll be out with the African Families in the UK. So we started this journey, and it's a real collaboration. And in my head, I thought, if I'm really honest, that I'm the clinician. I'm going to go to the African Families in the UK and to the 5 other organisations, because there are 6 of them. And what I'm going to do is teach them maternity. I'm going to give them a bit of an update on maternity, how it works, bearing in mind that they work with, some of the organisations work with refugees and people seeking sanctuary. Often some of the people cannot speak English as a first language. So there are some real marginalised and diverse groups. I thought, I'll go and teach them maternity. That's what I'll do, because that's my thing.
Yeah. So
I rock up to teach them maternity. Again, naive and stupid, if I'm really honest. And I completely underestimated how amazing they all are, and B, my knowledge in terms of I had to sit and listen and learn before I could really share any of my skills or experience with them. Yes. And that's been profound. They taught me so much. It's about taking maternity as I know it and turn it on its head and saying, right, well, you drive it then. What do you need? And let's listen to you. So that was a real journey. There's another organisation in Ipswich that I'm working with called Phoebe, and Phoebe work with, they're a feminist organisation. They work with Black and brown women who, as they describe, are on the margins of society.
Right. Lots
of these women have left abusive relationships. Lots of them are here in this country on a spouse's visa, so with no paperwork of their own. Many of them can't speak English. So they are people often pregnant or with small children, but they are women on their own, and they've been through the system in the UK where they've found no help, and Phoebe's often the last place that they go for some refuge.
Right.
Phoebe is an advocacy service as well. So I started to work with Phoebe. Again, I thought, do you know what? I'll work with because what they've done is work up ambassadors and advocates for us. Phoebe have said, right, we'll give you advocates, and those advocates will work in the community with our women, but you can work with the advocates to update them on maternity. So that. I thought, great, I'll do that. So I met with the advocates, and I went with my midwife brain. And as a midwife, I'm all about choice and personalisation. So I said to them, look, let's talk about the choices that women in the UK and birthing people have today. Let's talk about the fact that if they want to birth at home or in a birthing centre, they have those choices. Let's talk about if intervention is suggested, that they can question it. They can ask for a second opinion. They can make a birth plan that suits them. And it went really quiet. And I knew I'd said something horribly wrong, but I just didn't know what I'd said.
Yeah.
And they said to me, you really do not understand our women and our culture. These are women who've come from areas in the world where medical services are really rare. They are not going to question a doctor. They are not going to ask you not to induce them or not to have a cesarean birth. This is not what we need. We need you to understand the context and the background of this. They are grateful.
Yes.
And so there was a whole conversation, a reset in my mind where I got kind of mind blown thinking, I have just been doing this so wrong for so many years.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
It does. And I think that's really valuable what you're saying, actually, because I think I've been part of things where it's, let's go out and talk to this, that, and the other community group. And what I'm taking from what you're saying is not only, for goodness sake, stop surveying because we know what the problem is, but also the thing of actually we just need to go out and build relationships and take that time.
Yes.
And I think that is a challenge, isn't it? Because for you to say to your boss, well, actually, I'm going to be out with the African families, they've got to realise that is valuable and actually more valuable than you saying, oh, I'm surveying 200 people or doing this, that, and the other analysis. So actually being able to go and spend that time and then for it to start opening your eyes is a really big deal. And I think that's quite a big shift because in the NHS we like to be able to kind of check off and tick we've done whatever task. Yes, we've done our equality engagement or impact assessment tick, rather than actually doing something much more meaningful but is much harder to put in a box and say we've done it.
And in reality, we all know how pressured maternity is. We all know the staffing capacities, the national shortage of midwives. How lucky am I to be in a role that actually I've had the capacity to go and do this? And I do get the challenges of an organisation trying to work up their services to meet those needs. I'll tell you the story that Rachel Walton told me the first day I met her after she'd scared the life out of me because she's a fierce woman, She said to me, I'm going to tell you this story. She said, I used to work for a charity, and don't quote me, I think it was in Rwanda. I could be wrong. But anyway, she worked for a charity. She said, and it was really interesting because the village that I was working in, she said the nearest clean drinking water was 5 kilometres away.
Right.
So every morning the women would get up and they would walk the 5 kilometres to the taps where they could access drinking water, and they would bring it back to the rest of the village. And she said it was interesting because the charity came in and looked at this situation and said, no, this is not acceptable. So we're going to start by putting taps in right on the edge of the village so that you don't have to walk the 5K. And that's exactly what they did. And they were very, very pleased with themselves. And the women used the taps for a few days, maybe a week. And they noticed that on the second week, the women walked straight past the taps and continued to walk the 5K to get their water. And this just continued and carried on. And when they were questioned about it, the women said, when we get up in the morning and we walk our 5K, the time is for ourselves. The babies come with us, but the men and the teenagers, they all stay in the village. It's too long a walk. We get time to talk about our lives and our emotions and our well-being. And when you put the taps at the edge of the village, the men came, the teenagers came. We had no time for ourselves. You didn't ask us if we wanted taps. You just put them in because, and that really struck me as something we do in the NHS over and over again.
Yes.
We see a problem and we say, right, we're going to fix it. Let's put some taps in.
Yeah.
And we don't ask the community if that's the way that they'd like to go or if it would benefit them. We just do it.
Yes. Yeah. We make a massive assumption the whole time, don't we?
Yeah. This is about not making assumptions. So that was one of, again, I've in terms of my partnership with these organisations, I have grown and learned so much more than they could ever gain from me, if I'm really honest. So we started to talk. And so this has involved a whole year of me meeting with them, usually monthly.
Yes.
I go and meet with different organisations. It's been really interesting. So the Phoebe organisation have worked out something that they call the Grandmothers Group.
Brilliant. Tell us about the Grandmothers Group.
Well, so when I was having a meeting with them, I did with the leaders. I did a kind of Zoom meeting via a screen, and I said to them, "Can you ask?" Again, I was still in my NHS midwife brain, saying, "Can you ask your women about this? Can you ask them about that? Can I tell them this and that?" We were talking about birth plans actually at the time. I love a birth plan as a midwife. We're all over that. They looked at me again. I knew I'd said something wrong. And she said, "I don't understand the birth plan. We don't get this because where we come from, you don't write a birth plan. You just don't." And I said, "Well, how do the women in your community then, how do they understand ways of giving birth and how do they then communicate that to the rest of us?"
Yes.
She said, when somebody gets pregnant in our community, there is an innate birthing wisdom. And that wisdom is passed from that woman's mother and her grandmother down.
Yes.
They talk a lot. She said that the grandmother in our community is revered. And her word actually is law. And then again, she looked me in the eye because she's quite a scary woman. And she said, "We are going to accept what you tell us, Teri, because you are a midwife and we respect you." She said, "But for us to change our ways, the information that we take on board has to be wiser than the grandmother's information." And she looked at me and she said, "You are not wiser than the grandmothers."
Wow, that's a high bar, isn't it?
Yeah, but challenge accepted. I thought, well, good. Okay, I accept that. Completely. So the next question is then, if the grandmothers are so influential in this society, then we have to educate the grandmothers, surely. We have to link with them. So Phoebe said, right, okay, well, there's a lot of women that we deal with that have come from other countries and they've left their social community behind. They don't have their grandmothers in this country. So what we're going to do is work up a grandmothers group to support them.
Yes.
Would you come and work with the grandmothers? So I said, yeah, it'll be great. So I walked into a room. There were 21 of them.
Amazing.
Most of them over the age of 70. And quite a lot of them, interestingly, are retired midwives from Rwanda and Zimbabwe. And they were fierce, all of them. They had an attitude of, okay, well, come on then, impress us with your silly midwife brain.
Yes.
Impress us. So again, I went in and I'd learned I felt a bit more learned by the time I got to the grandmothers, thank goodness. So again, I will go and I meet with them on the first Monday of every month, and I really look forward to my grandmothers meeting. And each time there are more of them. There were 31 the last month when I went there.
Amazing.
I know.
You must be doing something right then.
Honestly,
because you're drawing in more grandmothers.
Well, they stare at me the whole time, and they're very interactive. They ask some hard questions, and at the end of it, I'm always a little bit unsure if I've kind of met their brief. But a couple of months ago, and it was just before Christmas, I said, right, well, that's the end of our session, and it will be probably the new year before I see you. And one of them, she said, "You're coming back though, aren't you? When will we see you again?"
Oh,
and I
okay.
Thought, okay, I'm doing something right. So some of the topics we've talked about, so water birth, one of them, interestingly, they could not understand why anybody would want to submerge their body into a bath of water to give birth. Just did not. Right. I laughed like drains when I told them that water birth was a thing. I think.
Okay.
So then we talked about the physiology, though, of water birth and the relaxation of muscles,
Yes.
and the gate control theory and the oxytocin levels. And they were very, very interested. The changes of positions that you can adopt in water for upright birth.
Yes.
And at the end of it, I mean, they're such an amazing group of women, because at the end of it, they were saying, we absolutely get it. We get it. If it's appropriate and if it's possible, let's recommend water birth. We can see the benefits. So these are the conversations I'm having. One of the biggest things for me has been to talk about the birth herbs, because I've learned from the grandmothers that every time a woman goes into labour from their community, they take some birth herbs and they make a tea and they drink this tea.
Okay.
Interesting. I've been a midwife for 106 years, I think, and I've never heard, long time, never heard of the birth herbs, never. But what I found out, and I've asked a lot of my communities, yes, all of the women take the birth herbs. They just don't tell the midwives. They don't tell them.
Oh. So what are the birth herbs? I'm now interested. I've never heard of this.
Yeah, I was going to say, as an obstetrician, have you ever heard the birth herbs?
No,
me either.
Educate me.
I can't, because they won't tell me what's in them, because they don't
secret.
know.
Okay.
A lot of the time, the women in this country receive the birth herbs from their country of origin through the post. When I ask them what's in it, they don't know. But they do know that it is grandmother's wisdom and it's going to be useful. Now, as a clinician, I start to get a bit sweaty about yeah, I'm sure you are as well. You know,
I'm thinking, what's in that?
Yeah, I don't know. But I think this whole process has taught me that this has been going on for years and years and years, and I've not been aware of it. And this is cultural, traditional wisdom and knowledge.
Yes.
And who am I, midwife, to come in and say, please don't take the birth herbs? It's not my job.
No.
So that's about letting go and accepting and respecting that actually it's important in that community. Yes. So we've had conversations around the herbs. I still don't know what's in them. It's not my job to know, but we do have to accept that that is something that happens in some communities for sure. We had a conversation one month about labia pulling, which was very interesting to me. And again, so I've seen a million labias. I'm sure you have as well.
Yeah.
But what I found is, and not in all cultures, but in some specific cultures, as a girl has her first period, she is taught by her mother to stretch her labia, because it's seen as something very attractive to a prospective husband, a long labia.
Right. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Did not know that.
No.
Yeah. I've learned lots.
Yes.
and information and knowledge that has only come with building relationships and partnerships. Obviously, so this is the context around the films. And if I'm going to come back to the films, because I've digressed, but what we know is that at the same time as I was doing all of this, I was also going out to some of the midwives who I work with, who I did survey, because they're quite used to surveying. And in the survey, and it was a small survey, but I said to them, do you talk to people who come into your service about the effects and the risks of ethnicity?
Yes.
So we know that they're at higher risk. If you are black or brown, you are absolutely at a higher risk than a white woman. So do you have those conversations? Do you open those? And the answer was mostly no.
No.
Or sometimes. We had less than 50% of midwives said, yes, I do have those conversations. But over 50% either were a no or sometimes. And when I dug a bit deeper, it wasn't that people don't want to have these conversations. It's that they just didn't know how to open that dialogue. They were afraid of offending, of appearing ignorant and having again, it's the cultural understanding or awareness.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's a real gap, isn't there?
I think so, because I feel also it's difficult to know how to say you're in a group that we know it has a higher chance of complications and problems.
Yes.
Because is that higher chance because of inbuilt systemic racism?
Yes.
Therefore, if I say that you're in that group, am I immediately making assumptions and being racist?
Well, yeah.
Am I going to frighten the woman because there's nothing she can do about her ethnicity or cultural background? It's a bit like when we were there was a guidance for morbidly obese women, that we should tell them that they're at higher risk of this, that, and the other. And I would have poor women come to see me and cry and say, the midwife said I'm in a high risk group for this, that, and the other, and I've got to come and see you. But, you know, I'm pregnant. There's nothing I can do, or very limited amount I can do at this point. I'm in this situation and you're just frightening me. So I think there's that. And then the other thing is, if I don't raise it, which I must admit, I'm not embarrassed to say, I often don't. I am sitting there thinking, right, I've got to be really conscious and really listen to what this woman in front of me is telling me, and make sure that I'm putting to one side my assumptions or my possible inherent bias. And I've got to really think, because she is more at risk than someone else. So maybe I've got to do more investigations or take her more seriously than I might imagine, so that I don't miss something. So I tend to veer to that rather than...
But without maybe sharing.
Exactly.
So you're not sharing your concerns with her. And I think, again, that's quite a paternalistic model of care, isn't it? And I completely get what you're saying, because I think this is what I'm hearing from lots of staff is, well, she can't change the colour of her skin or her ethnicity, so why would I frighten her? But again, is it for us to own that information and not to share it? I think from the people that I've talked to in our community, they have said, it reassures me that you are going to take more care of me. I feel reassured that you are being more protective, that you are monitoring me because of my ethnicity.
Right.
I think, you know, it is diverse, and the reasons for the poorer outcomes, as you say, are multifaceted. And there is something about institutionalized racism within maternity services. We cannot shy away from that conversation. And about our attitudes about Black women don't feel pain in the same way as white women, and about the offer of care that we give to some people. All of that comes into it. You know, it might be a translation service or a communication problem.
Yes, yeah.
It is such a multifaceted thing that I think we have to be really careful. But I have come to the conclusion that people should absolutely be involved in that care and involved in those decisions. And we have to share that information and stop being so paternalistic about it.
Yeah. No, I completely see what you're saying, and I agree. And I think, like you were saying earlier about everything being a journey, and you can't be culturally competent, because that suggests you're done, you nailed it. And you're not going to do that. It's a bit like all my work with women on women's experience in maternity care. I thought I was quite a good doctor to start off with, but now if I look back, I think, well, I'm definitely a way better doctor. And hopefully in the future I'll be even better and more able to have these conversations and judge it right. But I'm not competent, I'm incompetent. And I haven't got it right yet. So I think that was then listening to the films and exploring the films, it kind of made me think, oh my God, there's loads here that I didn't know. I'm really ignorant.
Me too, Florence, honestly.
And then I was thinking, if I've learned that much from watching a 10-minute film on, you know, whichever topic, because there's a whole fantastic range you've produced, then imagine what I could learn from even more. And I suppose there's a slight fear of, oh my God, now I've understood the depths of my ignorance. But you have to do that to start learning, don't you? I mean, I'm ashamed to say, so you've done 11 films.
Yes.
And I think I could safely say I probably learned something from almost all of them. I think I did slightly better on the film about women seeking sanctuary, simply because I've done a podcast on that recently.
Right. Okay.
But I mean, even something as basic as there's a film on the Roma community.
Yes.
And then a film on the traveller or gypsy community. And for me to understand that those are distinctly different groups. I'm not ashamed to say, when I first glanced, I thought, why are there two films on that?
Yeah.
And then when I watched the films, I thought, oh my God, I've been making an assumption this is the same group of people for my whole life. So, you know, even those 10 minutes or even the titles opened my eyes to something new.
And I agree completely. You know, I've learned so much. I wanted for the staff that I work with, the title of It's Okay to Ask. It's okay to say, I don't know much about your community. I don't know much about the Roma community. So please tell me everything you know, and I will then go away and educate myself. But let's start somewhere. And with that acknowledgement that actually we cannot be culturally competent, and it's okay not to know, but it's not okay not to ask. It really isn't okay not to ask. And, you know, working with the Black and African family film, you hear Joyce in the film, who is an amazing woman. And she says, ask me about my colour. Ask me about my heritage. We are proud. We want to talk about where we come from and the colour of our skin. And that leads you into a conversation about those risks that we are really reluctant to talk about. You know, she said something really profound in our film, which really struck me. She said, we have naming ceremonies in our culture. Names are really important. If you can't pronounce my name, don't just say, oh, can I call you this? Which is a westernized, shortened version of my name. That's not acceptable. And again, she said, I don't mind how many times I have to repeat my name and you have to repeat it to get the pronunciation right. But it's really important to me and my culture that you say my name correctly.
Yes.
And I've learned so much from that. And I feel foolish now to think I've avoided saying somebody's name because it was hard. You know, it was hard. And now I will just go over and over and over it. So I've learned so much. One of the things that the Equity Forum said when we were talking about how do we educate midwives, and not just midwives, but public health and social services and health visitors and obstetricians. These are films for everybody. They said, we want to share our stories. We want to tell them how it feels.
Yes.
And that's how the films came about. They wanted to share that knowledge and those stories with us because they felt it was more powerful to hear it rather than us producing another e-learning and ticking the box to say you're culturally competent.
Yes. And I liked the films because you had people speaking about their own individual experience, but you also had someone from that kind of cultural group in the community that you were working with that could kind of give a broader context as well. And I thought that worked really well, having those different voices and different views were really helpful. And I definitely felt like for all of them, there was something that I took away. And I'm kind of thinking I need to go back and watch them again because I think you watch them and then you think you've taken away maybe one or two messages from that and you've gone and digested it. And now I'm almost thinking, but I can't remember this, that and the other. I would think that there'd be a resource that I could come back to again and again and again, actually. And also it made me think about the communities that are in my local area. For example, we have quite a big Korean community. And I'm thinking, I don't think we did do at one point the MVP, we did a little bit of work with the Korean community, but nothing like the sort of depth that you're describing. And really, why haven't we? You know,
I think it's time, resources, capacity.
Exactly.
But it's a poor excuse, isn't it?
It is completely. So I think you've produced something really valuable. To me, it was much more useful, like you say, the e-learning. I've done the NHS cultural competency, whatever e-learning. So basic and so, I mean, I suppose you've got to start somewhere, but really I didn't feel it educated me. I mean, essentially what it was saying is
Yeah.
Don't be biased, don't discriminate. And well, you know, I'm not stupid. I'm an educated professional. I know that. But I've got to understand that there's unconscious bias, and that there's making that connection with that woman or family and understanding them a bit might help me help them with their health, because I can then, like you say, put what I'm saying in the context that will be meaningful to them.
Yeah, I think, you know, stories are always more powerful than an e-learning or somebody lecturing to you. So I think it's really important that we hear people's voices, and that's exactly what this has done. So each time I've listened to them, and they are only 6 or 7 minutes, I've learned something new, and I have seen them a lot now. I had no understanding that a lot of people seeking sanctuary, refugees, and we've got a lot of those in our area at the moment, who are put up in hotels. Yes. And it comes with a package. It's a food package as well. They get their breakfast, their lunch, and their dinner. And it was only until I watched the film of a professional saying, if you book that person an appointment over lunchtime, they will have to choose whether they come to their antenatal appointment and see you, or whether they miss their lunch. And, you know, that really resonated. I had not thought about small things like that. So there is a myriad of learning, I think, that we can all take away from each of those films.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And that's really why I wanted to get you on today and talk, because I wanted people to realise that this resource is there, and go and use it and spread it. And because you and the communities you're working with have put so much time and effort and energy into producing what is such a fabulous set of films.
Yeah, I would hate for us to have just completed another tick box where I've said, right, well, I've created 11 films, and then they sit on a virtual platform somewhere and nobody watches them. What a shame, what a waste of our community's voices. So yeah, really, if we can get people to go, they're free to watch. You can have the whole showcase of 11 films, and I've had lots of universities using them, and student updates, and social services. The ambulance service actually yesterday contacted me and said they're using them in their training. Really happy for anybody to take them, share them, use them, because I think the learning is broader.
That sort of brings us to zesty bit in terms of what we want people to take away from the conversation. Definitely, I will put a link to the films in the program notes, and I would really encourage people to go and explore the films. Like we've said, they're quite short, 5 or 10 minutes, and I would actually say probably take them one at a time, because I must admit I slightly binge watched them, and that means some of them have slightly blurred into one another, which I think I need to watch them separately over a slightly longer period of time. But go pick one, explore it, listen to it, maybe even look at it as a group. You know, whether that's at work or, you know, with a bunch of friends or whatever, just to have someone else to discuss it with and chat about it and reflect a bit afterwards, and also use them to hopefully start being sort of brave enough to start having these conversations. So kind of, I think for me, my takeaway is to move away from that paternalistic thing and to actually say to women, actually, tell me a bit about what happens in your culture, or does what I'm saying make sense to you, or actually is this so alien and different to what you're expecting that I need to think about it in a different way for you. And also talking to people about, actually, I am taking particular care of you because I know the stats and I am particularly concerned. I guess the other thing is, if you're a pregnant woman, a new family listening to this, about getting your voice heard, and that's hard, because that's expecting you to come and do stuff on our terms, whether that's friends and family or maternity voice partnerships. But I guess there's also a mechanism there within your community of your talking within your community. If we put the onus on us to come out to those community voluntary groups, making sure that those conversations are happening. But I don't know, Teri, if you got suggestions about how we make things or how women can easily make their voice heard.
I don't think there's any easy, if I'm being really, really honest about this, I don't think it's going to be easy. I think we've created a system in maternity that is a complete shape, and we try to just fit everybody into that shape.
Yes.
And we've been cramming them through the round peg or the square peg. And of course, most people don't fit. But what happens is that they don't say they don't fit, because this is the system and we can't change it. And we come with these expectations that it's fine, it's all right, it's a bit flawed, but this is what it is. And I think it's unacceptable. We've got to start hearing the voices of people. So my message to anybody who's pregnant and watching this is maybe take one of those films and know that we're starting. Maybe you could take the film and watch it in your community, or send it to your midwife or your obstetric team and say, what do you think about this?
Yes.
And if the care that we're offering isn't suitable, if it's culturally inappropriate or it doesn't fit with your expectations,
yes,
there's nothing wrong with advocacy. And it might be a voluntary or community sector advocate. It might not be a healthcare professional, because the odds are not stacked in people's favour. We make the hierarchy, the language, the whole system feel that the power base is with us.
Yes.
It's not. It really isn't, but it feels that way.
Yes. Yes.
So this is 11 films has not even scratched the surface, let's be honest, because the hierarchy and the power base still sits in our organisation, and this really must change for us to improve outcomes. So I urge pregnant people right across the country to get a bit more vocal if they can, to find some advocacy, to have really honest conversations with us, to say, actually, you're not meeting my needs, and it's not acceptable anymore.
I think that is brilliant. I love that idea, actually, of watch a film and send it to your midwife, or bring it up in an appointment, or I think that's a really good way in. And tell us if you're missing a meal, or we're trying to fit you in a hole that you don't fit. I totally agree. I think that's a brilliant place to end.
Me too.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Not only for coming on today, but for sending me a message and drawing my attention to the films in the first place.
Thank you.
And I really hope that we can get more people watching them and spread the message, because
me too.
You and the communities you're working with are doing a phenomenal job.
Just the start. There'll be more work. I'm filming 24 new films on antenatal education, and a whole model of antenatal education. I'll let you know when that's done. That'll be towards the end of the year. I
think you might have to come back and do another episode.
That would be amazing. There's lots and lots of things to discuss and talk about, and one of my big things is about nice guidance, and again that paternalistic kind of stuff, the offer.
Yes.
So let's have some more conversations. But thank you for sharing. It's such an important topic. It really is, and I'm so glad that you found that you have a voice that you could share it.
Yeah,
really pleased.
It's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Florence.
I very much hope you found this episode of the theobspod interesting. If you have, it'd be fantastic if you could subscribe, rate and review on whatever platform you find your podcasts, as well as recommending the theobspod to anyone you think might find it interesting. There's also tons of episodes to explore in my back catalogue, from clinical topics, my career and journey as an obstetrician, and life in the NHS more generally. I'd like to assure women I care for that I take confidentiality very seriously and take great care not to use any patient identifiable information unless I have expressly asked the permission of the person involved on that rare occasion when it's been absolutely necessary. If you found this episode interesting and want to explore the subject a little more deeply, don't forget to take a look at the programme notes where I've attached some links. If you want to get in touch to suggest topics for future episodes, you can find me at theobspod on Twitter and Instagram, and you can email me theobspod@gmail.com. Thank you for listening.